You're listening to Investify, preaching financial independence and assisting investors to achieve a more flexible and free lifestyle through smart financial planning and real estate investing. If leaving the corporate world and jumping into this thriving industry is what you desire, tune in and listen to stories of like-minded individuals who made the leap to financial independence. Equip yourself with the right tips and tricks to start your real estate journey, making active or passive ventures that are highly profitable and rewarding.
What's going on, everybody? You are listening to Investify. My name is Craig Curlop, aka the Fi Guy, and I'm here with my co-host, Miss Ellie Garcet. What up, Ellie? How you doing?
Woohoo! I'm great, Craig. How are you?
I am fantastic. Last night, a bunch of friends and I went and played basketball, and I hadn't played basketball it's not competitive, but you wanted to win, for a while, and it felt really good to get out there and play like I was a kid again. So, yeah.
Good. Oh man, that's awesome. Yeah, I woke up in a really good mood too, and my wife was like, "Are you sure you need coffee?" I'm like, "No, I definitely don't need coffee today, but I'm still gonna drink it."
Yeah, because that makes you. Wait, are you a coffee drinker?
I am now. I go through stages. Sometimes yes, sometimes no. I'm in the middle of my yes.
You're in your yes phase. Yeah, it's so funny. I only drink coffee on days I do nothing, which is kind of counterproductive. I feel like coffee is relaxing to me, and I like to sit on my back porch and have a cup of coffee, but I don't like to work and have a cup of coffee. That to me just does no, that doesn't do it. So yeah, I think I like the experience of a coffee.
Oh yeah, I use it. I chug it. I drink it through a straw. I'm like, I just need this to pump me up even more, even though I already like what I do every single day. So anyway, that's interesting. What pumps you up then for work? What do you do instead of coffee? Play basketball?
I don't. So in the morning, I don't do anything. I mean, I work out. I'll work out before the day, and that usually wakes me up and makes me feel pretty good. And then mid afternoon, I'll have a little bit of a lull, and then I'll usually have. Sometimes I just have kombucha tea that Grace makes, which is amazing. Occasionally, I'll have a couple sips of Grace's coffee because she usually doesn't drink the whole thing. So I'll just see her morning cup of coffee on the table, and I'll just take a couple chugs, just because I kind of like the taste. But yeah, and that's or a tea or something like that. That's usually how I get through.
I like it. That's Craig's miracle morning.
That's my caffeine shtick for the day. But speaking of caffeine. This has nothing to do with caffeine. We don't mention it once in the entire episode, but we've got Whitney Elkins Hutton with us today, and she is actually going to be one of the newest Bigger Pockets authors, hint, hint, and is going to talk about her amazing journey through all of the trials and tribulations of real estate. And I just think it's an amazing story because she started off where a lot of us are today. And she's obviously a little bit more tenured. So, 20 years from the future, you can kind of see what your vision is if you kind of follow the path that we're following. And so I just thought it was an amazing story. And I just loved having her on.
Yeah, it's a great story of determination, grit. And even with her knowingly saying that she was pretty ignorant on formulas and what exactly it meant to be an investor, she messed up a lot along the way, and she admits it, and she continued. So as long as you continue, listen to her mistakes that she shared with us and continue on your journey, and you can see the projection of where she's at now, because that can be you.
Totally, 100%. And so yeah, with that being said, let's bring Whitney onto the show. But before we bring Whitney onto the show, we ask you to please, please, please leave us a rating and review on iTunes or give us a rating on Spotify, wherever you're listening. It tremendously helps out the show and allows us to get more listeners, which then allows us to get better guests, and then that gets us more listeners, and it is a very fun cycle. But it all starts with your review. So if you haven't already, please leave us a 5-star review. And with that being said, let's bring Whitney onto the show. Are you coming to BPCon this year? If so, make sure to go to thefiteam.com/BPCon to sign up for this free dinner at Bahama Breeze from 6 to 9 p.m. on October 16th. This is going to be a 100% free dinner. We just want to get everybody from the Investify community and the house hacking and FI team community together all in one place. Now, unfortunately, we're not going to be able to get everybody. Seats are extremely limited. So be sure to go to the FIteam.com/BPCon, fill out a form, and we'll let you know within 24 to 48 hours before the event whether or not you've got a seat at the table. Thanks so much, and we'll see you all there. Whitney Elkins Hutton, welcome to the show, my friend. How are you doing today?
Doing great, Craig. Thank you so much for having me on.
Yeah, thanks so much for coming on. And it's great to finally meet you, quote unquote, meet you, because I know you're a big part of the Bigger Pockets community, as are Allie and I. And so are you going to the Bigger Pockets conference in October?
I hope to be going. I actually have, I've been putting off a knee procedure. I am not 80 years old, but my knee is, and so I need to take care of it. So it's poor timing, bad timing.
Yeah, dang. Okay. Well, we'll keep you in our thoughts and our prayers as you go through your surgery, and we're having fun at BPCon. So we do not envy your position. But speaking of your position, why don't we kind of rewind it back and tell us how you got to where you are today by starting at the beginning of where you first heard about financial independence and when you kind of made that life switch.
Ooh, well, I mean, actually, I heard of real estate before I ever heard of financial independence. And so back in 2002, I bought a property with a significant other in Fort Collins, Colorado. And about a month later, the relationship fell apart. I had a house, everything was under my name, and I panicked a little bit and stuffed the house full of roommates. It needed an entire rehab. I mean, we were talking green shag carpet from the 1960s, psychedelic daisies painted on the walls. But it had beautiful bones to it. And this is well before YouTube. And so you had to learn things from books or from people. And I bought a book from Home Depot, the Home Depot 123 book, and taught myself a lot of things about home, rehabbing a home, a lot of things that I should have not been doing, like electrical and plumbing. And 11 months later, I sold the property. And that's when it started kind of clicking for me is, wow, I can actually create money that's leverage outside of how much time I spend in a project. Because at this point in time, I'm working for, a national government organization, dealing with biologicals after 9/11. And I'm traveling sometimes 60, 70, 80 hours a week and earning, maybe 50 grand. And I made more money in that one transaction with real estate in 11 months than I did in my day job. And I wasn't paying, classic house hacking. I wasn't paying for any of my bills. My roommates were doing, paying everything for me. And I was like, man, this is amazing. Like, how many more of these projects can I do? Because if I can eliminate my housing expense, like I can see the light at the end of the tunnel. I might be able to retire one day. And then fast forward and did several projects, more projects like that. And then, eventually transition into other parts of real estate. But, I'll just pause right there because I know that was a lot that I just dropped.
Yeah, no, Whitney, that's an amazing kind of starter story. And we're going to want to dig into that. Before we dig into that first deal, though, tell us a little bit about, you mentioned you were making $50,000 a year. You were doing a lot of traveling, all that stuff. How were you also rehabbing a house? Because it sounds like you did a lot of that work yourself.
Nights and weekends.
Nights and weekends.
Yeah, if I was playing Ultimate Frisbee, I was working on that house.
And so that's what it takes, right? Like that is, everyone wants to have invested in real estate. Everyone wants to have the houses, but nobody wants to actually go through the process and the hard work and the struggle and the strife to actually get there. And I almost can guarantee you that any single person with any sort of success in real estate had their first couple of years of like, no one would want to live this lifestyle, right? Like you had no life. Yeah. It was all work, 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 work. But now you're crushing it. And so that's kind of the story there is that if you're new and listening to this, what are your, craft your first 2 years, pay your dues in that way, and you'll reap a lifetime of benefit.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Well put. Honestly, Craig, for me, it was a necessity. I thought I was financially drowning. And so I think, especially when I work with coaching clients now at Ash Wealth, And even in my, work with, working with investors at passiveinvesting.com, those are a lot of things that I help them understand is, this, you have to put in the work up front. Like, it's not just like you're going to invest and then all of a sudden, 12 months later, you're going to be financially free. It's like the iceberg, the mythical iceberg underneath the ocean, right? Like, there's a ton of ice under the ocean. When you see the iceberg, you only see the top 10%. And so there's a lot of work that goes in for that foundational work. And oftentimes that first deal isn't actually going to make you a whole lot of money. It's actually just going to teach you the skills and the grit that you need in order to carry into your next deals and to be able to bob and weave and grow your portfolio further.
Absolutely. And so, Whitney, before we move on to your next deals, we do like to dig into your first one. And so, Allie, are you ready?
I'm ready. I'm ready for the
for real deal. Boom, boom, boom. All right, Whitney. This is the first deal that we do. We like to dive in, even if it was a little while ago. We like to see how you got started. So it sounds like you bought this home with a partner. The relationship didn't work out. Tell us a little bit about that. Tell us about the price, about how you rented it out, about the rents, all that good stuff.
Yeah. So mind you, this is 2002, a little while ago. But the purchase of the property was like right around $160,000. And the after repair value all in, I think I put it on the market for $229 and then ended up closing like right around $219, 11 months later. And my whole intent with this property actually was never to flip it and sell it. It was to flip it and start a life with somebody. So, fortunately, a lot of things kind of, panned out for me buying that, the piece of real estate in the right location. And that was credit to a realtor at the time, who oddly enough had put the book, the Purple Bible, Rich Dad Poor Dad, into our hands. But the thing was that I read the first couple chapters and I went, I got it. And I put the rest of it down. And then, after my second deal, which I'm sure we'll get into, I was like, I don't got it. I need to go back and read this book. But yeah, bought it for about $160. Now I think I bought it, it was 103% financed. So this was back when you can, what was it? You could get like 98% financing on the primary and then take out like a 5% HELOC for your down payment. Wow. And I borrowed $8,000. I borrowed $7,000 from my grandfather to be able to close this whole thing. So the lender, this is Wild West of lending. The lender said, your grandfather just needs to sign a note that you don't have to pay that $7,000 back. I'm like, okay. Well, I did. I paid him back, but I was 103% financed on that house. I put $8,000 on credit cards to complete the rehab, and I did all of the sweat equity myself. And then sold it I think right around $219, $221, 11 months later. And I used I didn't pay the full real estate commission on that either. I only paid 3% commission on that. So, and then the whole entire time I had roommates that I had 3 roommates that were paying about $350 to $400 a month in rent. So that covered all the housing, all the principal, interest, taxes, insurance, and then also the bills. But that wasn't by the design. They said, what can we pay in rent? And I just threw out a number and it happened to work.
So not only were you financed for more than the property was worth, you also purchased with someone else, a significant other, not married, no, and then therefore also, I'm assuming, no formal partnership agreement, LLC type. So when and you mentioned you're coaching now, when other people are in the same situation where they're not able to purchase on their own yet, and they're kind of thinking about purchasing with their significant other, what's your recommendation to them now?
Well, in this case, I didn't use, for this particular deal, I actually used money within my own family. I kind of had the wherewithal to understand that, until we were married and sharing our finances and, had that marriage certificate in place, which that we weren't even discussing that wasn't even on the radar. I'm like, one of us needs to take this on. But for people who are in like a relationship that I'm coaching and they don't have the income, I maybe, go to, friends, family, parents, brother, sister, and see if they want to partner up on a deal. Or maybe if you have bad credit, maybe like a parent is willing to help co-sign on a loan in order to get a deal. I'm working with a current client right now that would like to buy multifamily with her brother. For one reason, like her brother lives in an amazing market. And so he also needs a place to live. So they're trying to kind of like, and the parents are looking to put in the money to help them get started. So there's so many different ways. It's really all about creativity on how you want to get started. There's so many ways to get started.
That's amazing. And it's funny that you kind of house hacked like before house hacking was ever really a thing, right? Like you definitely hadn't heard of the term. You didn't even know about it. You kind of just did it out of necessity. And I find that a lot of people that did house hack, before 2010, it was just kind of made sense. You thought about it, and like to this day, I think it still makes a lot of sense, which is really cool. And so I won't ask you to kind of like, I mean, do you remember what the numbers look like? Like, do you remember what your mortgage payment was and what the rents were and all that? But you said you kind of were just covering your mortgages with the rent.
Yeah, I had 3 roommates and they were paying somewhere between $350 to $400. I mean, the mortgage probably was closer to I want to say about $900 a month, and so I was clearing about $300 a month, like after expenses, on the property. And but to answer Ali's question earlier, I didn't have the wherewithal. And this is the funny part, guys. I'm a trained epidemiologist. Numbers are my life, right? Like I love, like, it's like having kind of like the kissing cousin of like a statistics degree, right? Like we take all the stats from the biostatistician, back in my previous life. And then we would go, okay, let's now go implement, X behavioral change within the community. In this case, I was working in infectious disease. I knew how to work numbers, but when it came to like looking at running this property as an investment, I didn't think of it that way. And I certainly didn't approach it that way. I was just kind of like, well, this sounds good. Like I asked my friend, if you have a roommate, what are you charging them? They were like about $350, but if you're going to include utilities, maybe bump it up to $400. And I'm like, perfect. I'll just take that number and tack it on here. So I don't suggest that now. That is not how I coach my clients now.
Well, it's kind of funny, right? Because like I think anybody when they first get into something, they just kind of wing it. Like no one is like you're the worst when you first start, and then you kind of slowly get better and better and better as you go. And so, again, like if you haven't gotten started yet or you're thinking about getting started, like just take action and then figure it out along the way, because you will figure it out. But you don't even know what there is to figure out until you actually start having problems and start just doing it. And so, Whitney, that's amazing. It's so cool that you had the kind of the wherewithal to house hack on that first deal. So how did you now leverage that into deal number 2, 3, and onward?
Yeah, absolutely. So from there, walked away with that $52,000 check. I'm thinking I'm the hottest thing since sliced bread. So I go right to buy my dream property in the mountains, this little tiny cabin in Estes Park. And then, you guys are probably laughing because you guys know the area too. You're just like, that is not the hotbed of real estate. I remember there's still lessons I haven't learned here. And I didn't really fully learn. I learned most of those lessons in a pretty rough way on the second property. So I go into this property, I buy the house that I want, not the piece of real estate, as an investment, right? I'm still not thinking as an investor. But I buy this little property up in the mountains. I violate every immutable law of real estate. Number one, under, location. Like, and when I go to sell that house, I lost my job about 12 months later. And when I go to sell this house, I'm like, sure, this is a retirement community. I'm going to find some retiree that wants to buy this house. Well, no retiree wants to go to 7,000 feet and then walk 19 steps from the parking place on a slippery deck staircase to the upper floor. I mean, I had people, they would park in the driveway. They would come for a showing, they'd park in the driveway, and they were like, turn right around and just leave. And then that was life for about a year in order to get this house sold. But yeah, that last property almost sunk me.
And so this was just like your personal residence, right? This wasn't an investment property. You didn't rent it out. And so what did you end up buying that one for? What did you sell it for?
Yeah, so I bought that one just right around, I think, 199. So I still had a little bit of money left in my pocket. I did have the intention of renting out the other room because I was like, that worked so well for me, on the last deal. Like, why not? I'm still young and single. Let's do that again. But I mean, again, you have to understand who your renter is. I'm now living in a market where majority of my friends were climbers like me. And climbers like living on the back of their cars. They want like the $50 couch deal. You say $400 for a room. They're like, how much for the couch? like they don't want to pay that. Maybe that's changed, a little bit, but the lifestyle back then, I was really tough to find a quality renter in that space. And so it was that next deal was really rough because I found myself not only in a very bad loan, adjustable rate loan. Again, remember, I'm still not good I'm not an investor right now. I'm going in more naive than I did on the first deal. I'm in a floating rate debt loan. After 12 months, it starts adjusting on me. I lose my job. I'm trying to sell this house. 2006, guys, not in a good market to be selling property. And anyways, I get an offer for $229, and I said a realtor convinced me that house should have been worth closer to $259, $265, something like that. And so I say no to that offer, that first offer I get, and that house stayed on the market for another 12 months. And guess what offer I got after 12 months? $229.
Oh no. Yeah, hindsight's 2020 there though, right? I mean, I've dealt with clients, actually one recently that we had a listing for, and we got a really good offer above asking, but he thought we could get a little bit more, and I was like, I don't know, like I think this is a good one, but ultimately they decided to pass on it, and so just for reference, like we almost got under contract at 685. That was the first offer. We ended up closing at like 625 with seller financing and like a little bit, yeah. So it was kind of a big hit that this guy took. But hey, to each his. I mean, that's kind of what happens. Like you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah, and I probably, if the house were in town and a single level, like no 19 steps, built in the side of the mountain, I probably could have gotten more. But there were a lot of I was outside of town by about 2 miles. There were a lot of things that somebody had to deal with that they weren't willing to pay for. But that's not even the fun part of the story. So I burned through 3 or 4 realtors. I'm now having to live out of my car to keep roommates in the house just to afford the house because the loans adjusted on me. And so this is what I'm having to do. Now, mind you, I also didn't have a job, so I'm climbing a lot too. So life was not completely horrible for me. So don't cry a river on that. But anyways, during this time, the retaining wall behind the house was also starting to collapse because my neighbor had a roommate living in a bus, and the extra weight of the bus was causing damage to the retaining wall. And anyways, when the house goes under contract, my realtor says, just sign this piece of paper saying you'll bring $6,000 to close to pay for the retaining wall. And I didn't want to do it, but he's like, this is a good deal. We'll get it done. Let's just say at the end of the day, the retaining wall cost a little bit over $30,000. I have no idea who paid for that. It was not me, because remember, I got them locked in with that piece of paper. But the bus got moved from behind my property to my neighbor's property, and it broke their wall. And I'm like, guys, it's just the bus. You moved the bus, the retaining wall's fine. Anyways, so the retaining wall all gets put back together. We close on the property. Nobody can be in the same room with each other. It was a very raw deal. Didn't have to be, but that's how it ended up. And then within 24 hours of closing, my neighbor's roommate moved his bus back into position behind the house, and the wall collapsed and the bus went in the top of the house.
Oh, wow.
No. And
I
so
know.
the new buyers had to deal with that?
Yeah, I felt bad. I felt really bad. But
my God.
Call to get the next day. My realtor calls me and I'm like, what do you need? And there's all this yelling and screaming, and you hear a guy pumping a shotgun, and I'm like, oh gosh, what's going on?
Oh my God.
What?
And
Oh my
yeah,
gosh.
and I'm like, am I
So
liable
so
for anything? And he was like, no, you're not. And I'm like, okay, we're done.
oh my gosh. We'll talk about lucky on your end. I mean, shoot, if that closing got delayed one day, who knows what would have happened.
Wow.
Man. Wow. So okay. All right. So now that house is sold and now you're living in your van, right? Or did you find another house to live in?
A little Ford Focus. No, I was by this time I'm actually renting. I'm kind of figuring out what's my next move, um, and just I'm trying to lick my wounds from real estate. I've met my now husband, at this point in time, and it didn't take me long, because I did have a little bit of cash left over, right? I got my down payment back and maybe like a couple grand from that property, but I did have to float it for better part of a year. So I would say I broke even on that. And then, of course, like, the dust settles, you get through Christmas, and he was like, well, what do you want to do? And I was like, let's go buy a house. He was like, are you kidding me? And I'm like, no, I think I got to figure it out now. And then I actually finished the book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I'm like, okay, things make a lot more sense. Like, I need to educate myself.
It only took you 4 years, right?
Only maybe a little bit longer. Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's amazing. So, all right. So yeah. So tell us. So now you've got your husband or boyfriend or whatever, but basically husband at the time. And so how does that next deal look, and how do you convince him to get on board with this, especially after maybe he only saw your last quote unquote failure? How'd you get him on board?
So we bought a condo together. So he didn't necessarily want a house. And, in Boulder, for us to buy the house that we really wanted meant we had to actually go outside Boulder. But we could afford a condo in Boulder. So we were in South Boulder in a little area off of Tantra Drive. So great open space, places for the dog to run, mountain biking. So that was really the lifestyle is really what kind of hooked my husband. And he had to have a garage. That was the other thing. And that was the only condo complex that we could find that had a condo with a garage. But we went into that property and took what little cash I had left over. We rehabbed that property, refaced the cabinets, painted, put in some better closet systems. It was really kind of funky to get from the master bedroom to the bathroom. You had to walk through the closet. So I was like, well, if we put in some beautiful cabinet system here, we get all of our stuff off the floor. This actually looks like a nice, like, kind of master bathroom suite. And again, we had no intentions of really flipping this property or anything like that, but we get everything completed, and our realtor comes over just to have a beer one night. And she was like, you guys did a really nice job. You know what I could sell this for right now? And I'm like, just like, I can get you in the house. And I'm like, no way. Now this is like 2008. So the market in Colorado, or at least in Boulder, didn't tank. We didn't see it, probably as much of a decline that Denver did, but we were flatlined. And at that point in time, we had made just enough on that condo. I think we made like 35, 40K on that condo, again, in about a year and a half timeline, that we took that in with our down payment and a little bit of extra savings and bought our house.
Ooh. And so now this is a primary residence, right?
Yep. So we actually the house was are going to be our next live and flip and house hack, and we did flip it. We rehabbed it. We house hacked it up until we had a child. We always had like somebody living with us and helping pay for a little bit of the bills. But then that's when we realized that we had to start doing stuff out of state.
Right. And so when you sold this the condo, were you living there for 2 years, or did you know about that rule?
We yes and no. It was in the middle of the sale that we had been informed about that rule, and because our intent was to stay there with 2 years, we had our CPA to like really kind of help us line out all of that. We did end up paying a little bit of tax on that because you at the time, and I don't know what the tax law says now. I'm not an accountant, but it's not like you're on the hook for all the capital gains. It's like if you're, it's a sliding scale. So whatever time that you still have left on that clock, that's the portion that you paid the capital gains on. At least that's how our accountant helped us kind of figure that out. This is like back in, I don't know, what are we now? We're now in 2010. So, Yeah, so we just had a little bit of capital gains, there. But then we brought all of that, and our purchasing, our next project was a little interesting because, the gentleman had the house on the market for about 7 months and had no bites. And we look at it in February and we're like, well, the paint's Smurf blue and it's painted neon green on the inside, but it's got really good bones. We know how to paint. The addition on the backside of the house was it was like a enclosed porch. It's falling off. And I'm like, well, eventually we'll redo this, make it a 4-season room. So we saw the potential there. But it literally took scraping together every last penny we had to close the deal. And we even still were about $2,000 apart. And the seller was like, I just bought a new fridge. He was like, I'm not going to come down anymore. You need to find $2,000. I'm like, wait a second. I hate your fridge. Take your fridge and we've got a deal. And I closed the deal and we got it signed on the dotted line. My husband was like, wait a second, we don't have a fridge? What did you do? I'm like, it'll work. We'll figure something out.
It's so funny how deals can fall apart over the smallest items sometimes. It's like, a fridge or whatever. I mean, not that a fridge is small, but $2,000 in the grand scheme of things is not very big. And so now this house is going to be your primary residence. This is, I guess, kind of like your last house hack, right? Because you are, this is kind of your, I don't know if it's your forever home or at least your next decently while home. And so now you're just renting out different rooms, or is there a separate basement, or what does it look like for your primary?
Our guest room, we rent it out. We also do Airbnb. So when we're not here, when we're traveling, we'll rent out the entire space. And then we have other homes in other markets now. There's a whole part of our portfolio we haven't talked about, scaling piece of our portfolio, but now we have a home in Bentonville, Arkansas, and then also one in Salida, Colorado. And so, wherever we're staying, obviously, we're paying the bills there, but wherever we're not staying is being rented out.
Gotcha. Okay. So yeah, let's talk a little bit about that transition then. You're buying and flipping, you're living flipping. It's kind of like what a lot of people do, when you're starting out, but now you've got some momentum, you've got some scale, at least you've got some knowledge, and you finally read Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And so, what is it? What are you doing to go out of state? And why did you decide to move out of state, in 2010, 11?
Well, so during this time, these, 3 or 4 projects that we did, really taught us that we were good at building up buckets of equity, but really bad at creating cash flow. And that, that's when we finally kind of come across the term financial independence, retire early, right? Financial freedom. I'm like, up until then, I didn't have the vocabulary even to say that that's what I needed. And I find that's with so many of my coaching clients, they're like, oh, that's what I want. And we're like, I didn't even know that existed. So, stumbled across that vocabulary, started listening to several podcasts. And I'm like, oh, we gotta stop living, flipping, and house hacking. That's fine, but we need to start getting properties under our belt where other people are paying down the bills for us, so essentially renting them. And we bought a property in Broomfield, Colorado. We also had one under contract in Arvada at the same time. So we had enough capital to close on 2 properties at the same time. We got one of them closed. We put it under contract on Christmas Eve. Nobody's looking at properties on Christmas Day, guys. Christmas Eve. So it's a wonderful time if you're willing to put in that work. And in the middle of a snowstorm, nonetheless. But so we closed on that property, put a renter in it. And then that's when we made another fatal mistake that I didn't know what I didn't know. Again, you guys are still going to laugh. I still hadn't figured out how to put together a spreadsheet to evaluate how much cash flow we actually needed. What was, our return on equity? Didn't know that. What was cash on cash? Didn't know that. And in the process of kind of banging my head against the wall going, wow, we just sunk $65,000 into this next property and it makes $400 a month at best with, and that's if something doesn't happen on the property. I'm like, this is going to take forever for us to become financially free. And that's when we found bigger pockets. And then all of a sudden I went, ooh. I had to go back to my husband. I'm like, so we didn't mess up. We got a great house. It's going to appreciate really well. We're going to make tons of money. But you remember when we said we wanted cash flow? We jacked that up. We got another appreciation deal. And so that's when we actually dropped the contract on the house in Arvada, and quickly took that money and started going out of state. And so we, did a ton of research on Kansas City and Indianapolis, and those were the first two markets that we went into. Our first goal was just to buy one rental property that year, and by the end of the year, we had 10 under contract.
Jeez, that's crazy. We hope this episode is inspiring you to take action. If you're thinking about becoming a real estate agent or an agent who wants to join an investor-friendly team, just hit me up on Instagram at The Fi Guy, because we are growing our team in Denver, Seattle, San Diego, and Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, but also adding to our network in all 50 states. And if you didn't already know this, the Fi team provides a super supportive environment with one-on-one coaching, accountability, and ongoing training to help develop kick-ass, rock star, investor-friendly real estate agents. So hit me up on Instagram at The Fi Guy, shoot me a DM, and we'll set up a time to chat. Can't wait to chat with you. And so how did you pick those markets? Was it just, did you look at all the industry data and the job growth and yada, yada, yada? And then how did you expand in there? How did you get your team?
I mean, literally devoured Bigger Pockets and, everything in the forums, and really started just, fully understanding this market, or this, asset class that I just really didn't know. How do you analyze the deal? How do you analyze the market? What do you look for in a rental? What do you look for in building a team? And just I took action on all of that. And, here's the thing. And I think for me, and especially with my coaching clients, I see this a lot. I had enough wherewithal at this point in time and taken enough lumps in real estate to understand there really isn't a decision I can't undo. If I jack it up again, I can I can sell the house. We had this house in Broomfield. I'm like, well, okay, we'll hold on to it for, 12 months and then we'll sell it. We'll be fine as long as it doesn't burn down, right? We're going to be perfectly fine in this. We're probably going to come out ahead. But it was better for me, I knew, to take action and then have to pivot than it was to just stay in analysis paralysis. So how we settled on Indianapolis and Kansas City was more, who did we know? Who do we feel comfortable with? Who had friend of friends worked with? So we kind of really worked our networks. We were introduced to a realtor in Indianapolis that really hooked us up with an amazing team. David Green says, rock stars know rock stars. So we really, ran with that connection, built everything. And then in Kansas City, it was a similar experience with another investor friend.
Yeah, I just want to kind of echo what you said, because I've got some properties out of state too, and I did the exact same thing. I just found somebody that was in a market that I liked that was doing the thing that I wanted to do. And so I would really caution people to go on, to look up citydata.com and look at every single city in every state of the country and try to figure out the perfect market, because it just doesn't exist. And that is what analysis by paralysis is. If you're on citydata.com, in my opinion, you probably have analysis by paralysis. If the only time I'd say go on that website is if you've picked Kansas City and you've picked Indianapolis and you just want to confirm that things are trending in the right direction, and look at one or two stats. But don't go comparing Indianapolis to Kansas City to Detroit to Jacksonville, Florida, because you'll never, ever do a deal that way. Would you agree, or am I totally off?
I think it's worthwhile to pick 4 or 5 markets that you're interested in and get to know them pretty well. There's always that split decision. I can invest here, I can invest there. There's never a perfect market. And so it's always a matter of which one first. And so I think it's, what is your process that you need to work to get hyper focused and stay in that lane. So, I worked with people that are one call, they're like, I'm going to be in Kansas City. And the next call, I'm going to be in Knoxville, Tennessee. And the next call, I'm going to be in Fort Myers, Florida. You're just no. Just pick one market and stick with it and run with it for 3 or 4 months. Really dive deep, because you have to build the network there to really uncover the people that are going to help you find the deal.
For sure. Yeah. I mean, there's deals in every market, right? there are investors in every market, therefore there are deals in every market. So just pick the market and then go find the deals. That's kind of what I always say.
Yeah. And I also suggest there's a website, and I'm forgetting the name of it, but there's a website that pretty much will show you which states are landlord friendly or not. So if you have any questions, like narrow it down per state. Is this a landlord friendly? Yes. Okay. Then you can look at a couple of cities there. And that was like the biggest thing for me, because I feel like everyone, well, not everyone, but a lot of people suffer from analysis paralysis for a long time before they can get started. And like when I was still looking at out of state rentals, I remember I'm in Tucson, Arizona. I was reaching out to somebody else who was an investor out in, I think I was looking at Minneapolis area for a while. And I was talking to someone in Minneapolis who was looking at Tucson. And it was just so ironic that both of us were thinking that the other market was better. Like you don't even have to always look outside of your state, unless you are in one of those very like very tenant friendly states. But I would say like try to find a website that literally just shows that. Sometimes I think on that website also, if somebody can find it, I'll have to look for it too. There's like a toggle. It shows you how landlord friendly they are, like on a scale, on a sliding scale. So like do that, look into it, and then just start building the team there. Also, what I see a lot of investors doing is once they build a team and they go through all of this work to create a team, find a property, they close on it, things are good, and then they look at another city instead of looking at all, like they put so much effort into creating a team in Indianapolis or wherever they're looking, and then they look elsewhere and have to start over. Like use that work that you've already started and just continue in that market. Maybe expand another 30 minutes outside of the original area you're looking at.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think I've seen one of those, the kind of the toggle demographic or graphic that you're thinking of. Avail.com, I think, has one. Rent Ready, I think they've had one too. But yeah, you can just go look up, Google like landlord friendly states, and, one of those platforms will pop up, and there are a couple that are, help you. And you have to, when you narrow down the state, you also want to get down into the actual local jurisdiction and, see what's happening there, right? Like, because Missouri, very landlord friendly state. But Kansas City, they elected a new mayor a while back who's anti-eviction. Like, and, if you dig into his story, you'll understand why he's so anti-eviction. He thinks, you think these sweeping changes that he's putting into effect are, he really truly feels like he's right for his constituents. But at the same time, you want to pay attention to also what's happening at the local level, too. So
totally couldn't agree more there. And especially like, when you're going under contract, that's like when all that due diligence takes place, right? Is like you're looking, like I wouldn't personally, like there's too many neighborhoods in every city to go look at every neighborhood to figure out like which one is the best. But like just go under contract and then you start to figure things out, right? Or ask your realtor. They should actually know this stuff. And then you go confirm it when you go under contract.
There's another website like citydata.gov, right? Like to me, I think isn't as easy to like understand what's happening in the market, but there's another website that's called niche.com, niche.com. And anyways, it's the exact same data set that citydata.gov pulls, exact same, or citydata.com, exact same data set, but they like, for people who like color coding and ABC rankings, that can be like, they're really quick and dirty to be like, oh, okay, great. Like I'm, kind of in a high area, right? So.
Yeah, I think that's great. Yeah. I've never actually heard of that site. So that's, I'm going to look into that.
They're also really good with schools as well, like the school districts. If you're looking at a specific school district, greatschools.org and niche.com, they have a really good rating system. If you're looking at a specific, once you've narrowed down that general zip code or the general city, there you can choose which neighborhood you want to live in based off that.
Amazing. Great. Whitney, okay, so so now you're investing in Indianapolis and Kansas City. You picked up 10 properties there basically in 1 year. Sounds like it was like 2012, 2013. Does that sound about right?
We're probably closer to 16 now.
Okay, 2016. Okay. And so what are those properties like, let's just kind of capture that whole portfolio. Your whole Kansas City, Indianapolis, you're just buying single family kind of residential homes there. And what does that portfolio cash flow you? Did you find your dreams of cash flow yet?
Yes, actually, we started down that path. So we had the property here in Broomfield, Colorado. 600 or 65, $70,000 investment, cash flow 400 a month. That's us doing everything, managing everything, setting aside zero for capex maintenance, and us property managing everything. So essentially zero cash flow, zero. I think by the time I accounted for property management, it was like 0.5% cash flow. So not good. So I figured, I'm like, if I can take that same $65,000, I can now go buy three-ish $100,000 properties, right, in another market and make, 400 to 500 truly per door after setting aside capex reserves and paying for property management. So essentially, triple. I mean, it almost infinitesimally increased my cash flow, but in my mind, I was thinking tripled my cash flow over what we were taking home and putting in our pocket. And that's when I was like, the light bulb came on for me, and I'm like, we could retire off of this. Now, we get these 10 properties, under contract. We actually start listing the one in Broomfield for sale, and guess what? I lose my job again. So they eliminated my entire department at the company that I had worked 11 years for. And I actually had 2 properties under contract, at that point in time of those 10. And I'm like, so, I come home, I'm in tears. Nobody likes being let go. Like, even though it was like a company-wide layoff, nobody likes being told that they're not wanted anymore. So I'm in tears. We're supposed to be walking out the door for a trip. This is right before Thanksgiving. And my husband, he gets me home and he goes and he was like, do you still want to go on the trip? And I'm like, yes, we're leaving. And he's like, okay, I'm going to go run some errands. And he comes back. I'm on the phone with the lender, and he walks back in the door. The lender's telling me, sorry, Whitney, we have to cancel these contracts. You don't have a job. You can't close on it. And my husband walks in the door, and I'm like, he has a job. And they were like, he was like, well, he does. And they were like, but he's not, we haven't underwritten him. I was like, you're going to have to do all this work and change all the contracts and everything. And I'm like, done. And so for the next 3 hours, I changed all, we did amendments on all the contracts, moved them from my name to my husband's name. We got my husband underwritten for the lending. And by the time we walked out the door, 5, 6 o'clock for our trip that night, all 9 a.m. disaster hit. By the end of the day, we had shifted everything to my husband. And so we got those properties, closed. And then we were like, okay, we're selling this other property in Broomfield. We're going to have that money coming back to us. But there is a point in time where we're going to run out of savings, right? We can't just keep dropping down 20% on every property. Even with our high savings rate, what are we going to do next? And so that's when we went to our property manager in Kansas City and said, we know you do turnkey work. Do you have enough deal flow that coming in that you could teach us how to do BRRRR investing? And he was like, yeah. He was like, I will take a fee on the first few to teach you how to do it. And I'm like, done. And so our next 25-ish properties thereabout were 25, 26 were all BRRRR deals.
In these markets, Indianapolis and Kansas City.
All in Kansas City. So we were just constantly recycling our capital. Not all the times were we pulling all of our money back out of the deal, but in a large portion, majority of our money was coming back out of those deals.
Okay. So when all this was said and done, in your Indianapolis and Kansas City portfolio, or it sounds like you've taken a few years, right? You're doing BRRRRs, and this was the time when BRRRRing was a lot more popular, right? Because prices were lower, contractors were cheaper, interest rates were lower. BRRRRing today is not the same. It doesn't work as well. And there's a reason why you don't hear as many people talking about it right now. And so where, at the end of it all, where is your portfolio sitting?
Yeah, cash flow wise, with those 36 properties, we're probably bringing in just around, probably $15,000 a month, somewhere in there. And we have a good chunk of our capital back to continue to invest. We're still working our day jobs. right? Because I figured, if we could, again, we talked about it at the beginning of the show, like if we can continue to pay our dues and stay employed this whole entire time to take advantage of the loan positions that we were getting, the type of loans that we could get, now we could just amplify that cash flow and just shove it right back into our business and scale further faster. So we started, burning started slowing down, and so we started having another problem where we had a lot of cash coming in, a lot of equity sitting on the sidelines, but no place to put it. And so that's when we decided that we needed to transition into larger deals. Also, it was just having 2 or 3 rentals is one thing. Having 36 of them, even if you have them with a property manager and managing the manager, that's a whole other beast. Dealing with all the lending on that, dealing with insurance claims, you name it. That's another full-time job in and of itself. And so we were like, okay, what can we do now? So we just, during this time, I actually started, investing a little bit into passive equity deals, into other people's multifamily deals. And I just thought of it as kind of like a bond sitting in my retirement account. I'm just going to wait for it to mature, but I'm going to leave it alone. But now I was like, wait a second, I could either go buy my own multifamily building, or I can invest in somebody else's deal and they can do all the work and I get a cut of the profit and I can stay focused on what I do best. And so we actually decided to explore both routes. I got into private equity real estate, raised on 29 deals, and was a general partner on 10 deals, multifamily deals. And that's, really where I learned a lot more about myself and what it is that how I wanted to, scale in real estate.
Yeah, I love having people on here that are a little bit more tenured, because you really can show the full story of like where you started. And most people listening are in your beginning phases of messing up on a house in Estes Park, or just breaking up with their partner. That's a lot of people's beginnings. But now you can see that, okay, you learned. You made a whole bunch of mistakes for like the first 10 years, right? Mind you, there was no bigger pockets. The only way for you to learn was through trial and error. And now people can hopefully make that 10 years a little bit shorter. That's why you're on this podcast, is to help other people do that. And, you then go and you go to residential, right? Small residential in the, in smaller markets to scale a portfolio that way. Build up $10,000, $15,000 of passive income, which by the way is amazing. And now you're like, okay, now you go up into commercial. And I just feel like that's like a perfect trajectory for anyone's like, let's say 20-year timeline or so. And like, no offense, but you didn't do it efficiently, not because like you did as efficiently as you could given the resources you had in 2002, right? But now we're here in 2023 with a lot more resources, and people can kind of skip those steps of failure. And so I just want to like just applaud that for a minute, because I think that's just amazing.
Yeah, I mean, I always get asked, what would I do differently had I known then what I know now? And I'm like, there's no way I could have known. I mean, aside from, I would have had to been in the right network at the right time. And I think that really is, goes back to surrounding yourself with the people that are going to elevate you. But at that time, I didn't have access to that network. I do now. And, with Bigger Pockets, so many people have access to such an amazing network that, even just like 5-10 years ago wasn't available.
It's so amazing. Yeah. Did you have kids at all in this time frame or anything like that? Any?
Oh yeah.
I don't want to say distractions, but because kids will put probably a damper on the real estate investing, right?
Well, they can also throw gas on the fire, right? So there's, there are a lot of things that you can do for yourself. But I think really when we put, our daughter was born, that was like the light, that was the fire, right? That's what the gas on the fire for me. I'm like, wow, this isn't just about me or my husband. This isn't about where, our future. This is about her future too. And, how, what do I need to do in order to change that, for us, not only just for us, but for her as well. And so really how I look at it is I'm this transitional character in our family that has the opportunity, to really just, make our lives completely different, but also, her life and her kids' lives.
For sure. Yeah, no, that's amazing. I love that you kind of look at that as the gas and not kind of like I don't know, whatever the opposite of gas to a fire, like water, I guess, to a fire.
It's a motivation.
Yeah, because it's not about you anymore, right? Now it's about someone else, right? You're not putting yourself first, and they have less control over it than you do. You've got full control over this little thing. So, no, that's great. Whitney, okay, so we kind of get your whole story, right? Like I think it's a magnificent story, and I think it's like just like the perfect, if you guys are listening to this and you're in year 2 or year 3, like fast forward 17 years, and more likely than not, you're going to be exactly where Whitney is, investing in syndications, raising money, like, or you even do it sooner than that if that's what interests you. But like in terms of just like a very nice, manageable, repeatable pace, where Whitney kept her job, like you kept your job the whole time. You still have your job?
I still work, but I'm now fully in real estate, I'm where I should be, like educating people on how to utilize real estate as a means of shoring up not only their financial, foundations for their family, but, helping them grow their portfolios and achieve that financial freedom so they can do what they want, where they want, whenever they want.
Right. No, I love that. And I think the whole, like, we're kind of tying this all in at the end with the family thing and all that. You want to leave, I'm sure, a little bit to your daughter. And so I know you're coming out with a book now with Bigger Pockets. So why don't you tell us a little bit about that? I know it's a little bit of a teaser. We're still a few months away, but yeah, we'll get it out there before anybody else knows about it.
Yeah. So, I actually presented at the Bigger Pockets conference last year and, did a presentation over multi-generational wealth. And it started off pretty slow. And I'm like, this is kind of a dry topic. Nobody really wants to talk about this. But by the time we got to the end, it was a room full of people. And I was like, okay, now let's talk about what happens when we die. And so many people were like, oh, I hadn't really considered that. Right? They were like, I got my will and trust. And I'm like, that is just one piece of a very large puzzle that you need to put together here. If you want to take all these things that you've built for yourself, shoring up your finances, learning how to create wealth, grow wealth, learning how to keep wealth, that's so hard for people. Now we got to figure out how do we pass this on effectively and efficiently to our heirs. And not only planning for your incapacity, but, planning for passing assets on, but, there are things that you should do beyond that to actually protect the inheritance if you choose to pass on an inheritance. And really just setting up, this isn't necessarily, if you want to build an estate that's millions and millions and millions of dollars and pass it on, fantastic. But this is really, the book is more about that principle-based approach that anybody listening to this can start. The younger, the better. But, this will get you like 85%, 90% of the way there. You're just following these principles in this book.
I love it. Well, I'm really looking forward to having that book come out. I'm going to have to give it a read. And I'm sure people are going to hear a lot more of your voice when that book comes out because you're going to be all over the podcast network. Awesome. Well, Whitney, I think it's about time to head into the final part of our show. But before we do you have any parting words for the listeners?
I think, again, if you guys are, listening to this and just going, man, I want that. And you want to compress time. It's not learning how to connect dots. It's learning, get in network with somebody, get in a community, get a mentor, get a coach, whatever that will help you avoid these mistakes and essentially fold that paper in half, right? Like the closest distance between 2 points is not a straight line. It's literally how can you bend that paper in half and have the 2 dots touch together? And so really your community, the people that you surround yourself with, the coaches and the mentors that you engage, they can be paid, they can be unpaid. Those are the people that are really going to help you, avoid the landmines, but also work through the new ones that you're going to find yourself.
Love that. Absolutely love that. Yeah, it's amazing. Allie, you know what time it is?
It's time for the
final
four.
All right, Whitney, this is the last 4 questions we ask everybody. Allie, kick us off.
Question number 1, Whitney, what are you reading right now?
Oh, interesting enough. So I have an 11-year-old. No Drama Discipline.
Love it.
She's in middle school. So yeah, that probably was not the business book that everybody was looking for. Business book, I don't, maybe people would consider this a business book, or not, but I actually just got finished reading The Family Board Meeting. Wonderful read if for anybody that has kids.
Cool.
Love it. Cool. All right, Whitney, what is the best piece of advice you've ever received?
I would say, really, investing in relationships, because so much of what you do, I know that piece of advice has probably been given out over and over and over on the show, but, I really can't drive home the point enough. Like, I wouldn't be where I'm at today if I tried to do it all on my own. Those relationships are going to, come in the form of, people you reach out to and help. They're going to be people that are peers, and they're going to be people that are doing what you want to do that you need to reach up and engage and, potentially hire.
I love that. I think like investing in yourself and in relationships is some of the best ROI that you can get.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And learn how to give and take, right? Like it's all about, providing value, but, getting value and providing value to the relationship.
Yeah. Question number 3. What's your why?
My why? So my why is I want freedom of choice of how I spend my time. And so these are things that I help my coaching clients dig down into, because so many people are probably listening to this podcast and their why is financial freedom. That's fantastic. And what else, right? Like you need, location independence. Do you want freedom of choice? Do you want to create an impact on the world? Like for me, like I want that freedom of choice to do what I want, when I want, with who I want.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. All right, Whitney, last kind of sort of question. If you were a wrestler, what would be your entrance theme song?
The Sissy Strap by the Meters. I love that song.
What is it?
The Sissy Strap by the Funky Meters. Oh, totally 1970s.
Oh, I was going to say, like, you're going to have to sing that for us.
You guys gotta cut that out. I'm a horrible singer. Just kidding.
Oh, no. We're going to shout it at the rooftops. Yeah. Amazing. I love that. I love how you answered that question insanely quick. I thought there would be like there was no hesitation. Like you've thought of that before.
My daughter just she didn't start with like if you were a wrestler, but she asked me like, what's your entrance song? I think we were watching like we were at a baseball game or something like that earlier this summer, and she was like, what would be your like walk-in song? I'm like, oh yeah, I got this.
That's amazing. That's so funny. All right, Whitney. Well, where can people find out more about you if they want to keep following your story? If they want to chat with you and maybe get some advice on where to invest their money and how to invest in real estate.
Yeah, absolutely. If you're looking for a one-on-one connection on how to develop your own financial plan and a real estate portfolio, you can find me at ashwealth.com, ashwealth.com. And then I've got some free goodies there for everybody. And if you're looking to, if you're somebody who is more into scaling into a passive portfolio and want to see deals in larger institutional grade, multifamily, self-storage, express car washes, and real estate debt, you can find me at passiveinvestingwithwhitney.com. I
love it. Whitney, thank you so much for coming on the show. It is such a pleasure to have you. And we'll probably have to meet up one of these times. I didn't realize you're so close in Colorado. So one of these days we'll maybe meet up. Yeah. So Whitney, thanks so much for coming on, and we'll talk soon.
All right. Thank you so much, guys, too.
Yeah. Thanks, Whitney.
And that was Whitney Elkins Hutton. Allie, what did you think about Whitney now that it's all said and done?
Whitney's great. I am really excited for her book to come out, and I'm sure the audience is too. It was really awesome listening to her story of her first 3 fumbles and then, fast forwarding to where she's at now with $15,000 a month in cash flow passively. And so it's a really inspiring story. I'm excited to meet her at Bigger Pockets if she's able to come.
Yeah, she'll be the one on crutches, so we'll know who she is.
Or the wheelchair.
Yeah, or the wheelchair, yeah. No, yeah, I totally agree. Like, again, like I kind of said earlier, I just think her story is amazing because it's just like a perfect little picture of like started small, got a little bigger. Now she's doing syndications and all that kind of stuff. And for those of you guys listening, in order to do a syndication, like you need to have at least $1 million net worth. You need to be an accredited investor. And so clearly she's successful. She's built the wealth that she's needed despite the mistakes that she's made. And despite of how like the first 10 years were just all trial and error, right? Like she messed up. And if she just stopped after that second property, she would have lost out on millions of dollars of wealth. And typically that biggest mess up that you're going to have is going to be on the first or second property, when everyone is telling you that it's not going to work, when everyone is telling you and you're not proven and all that, and you have all these, limiting beliefs and you don't have faith in yourself, but you've got to continue to have faith in yourself, persist through, because that failure, right? That failure is what is creating that is like the bottom of the iceberg that's forming, so you can actually show the big iceberg in a couple of years as it continues to grow. And so I hope that analogy kind of sort of worked, but the whole point is fail forward and don't be afraid.
Yeah, so once again, if you like this episode, please give it a rating. Please give it a review. We do want to hear from you. Let us know what you thought. And that's it. Thank you so much for tuning in.
Thanks so much, guys. We'll see you all next week.
That's it for this episode of Investify. We hope that these nuggets of real estate wisdom lead to more savvy financial planning and a clearer path towards financial freedom. For more content like this, subscribe to the show at investify.com. Don't forget to leave a rating and share it with your friends. Together, we can transform more real estate newbies into successful and clever investors. Thank you so much for listening. See you on the next one.